Hello and welcome back to Belmont Bunch. Today we have three other people besides me today. Of course, James and Tom, but also Sarah returns to the show. So I am acting like I'm a host. And last week we talked about how the Islanders are ruined for the next 10 years. But this past week, Lou has forced us into watching this season again. So we'll discuss that right now.
Yeah, I want to go straight from the fact that we are being forced at gunpoint to be invested in the season again. Lou, I think maybe Lou looked at the TV ratings and they were going down, and he was like, gotta make a big trade. That guy that screamed at me a couple weeks ago, gonna do that.
But we didn't get him.
Yeah.
We didn't get
Well,
Timo
at the
Meier.
very end of that, he goes, Timo Meier, and then he goes, Bo Horvat. And Lou was like, oh, wow, that sounded like an afterthought. Let me make that trade.
Yeah.
So Sterling kind of set it up well there. We're being forced at gunpoint to be invested again because we're going to be uninvested very soon when they're in an 85-year rebuild because they have zero prospects and they're going to go like 5 years without making a first-round selection in the draft. This is one of the most perilous situations I have ever seen a team choose to enter. But I think I'd like to hear from James and Sarah before I lose my mind.
Okay, my hot take is that I think this is I think this is a classic. What is it? Bird in the hand is worth two in the bush scenario, where we know how good of a player Bo Horvat is. Beauvillier is still, it seems like he's not thriving on the Islanders, team, and obviously Raty, it seems like he has great potential, but we just don't know. It just, it takes time to develop. So that's and then the protected first round pick as well. So yeah, I think it's like it's a screaming we're still in win now mode, which is kind of surprising, So I mean, it's
some might say we're in denial.
I don't know, Sarah, would you say that you're in denial?
The whole thing with Bo, I've been so over him the entire first half of this season. So I'm pretty happy that he's gone. I've just been constantly shitting on him. Why?
Because anybody that said that a year ago would have been completely, would have been killed by the community.
Yeah, but just this season, I don't know, he's got the yips or he can't handle New York anymore or whatever. He's turning into the new Josh Bailey, or he was on his way to before he got traded. But Ratu, I'm very upset about because he was really, he wasn't their best prospect, but he had a lot of potential and he could have been that good prospect, but now we don't know because they shipped him off to Vancouver.
Yeah, a terrible fate, to be sure, for any player to be shipped off to Vancouver right now. But
no, but I mean, if this is Vancouver's rebuild, you know what I mean? It's like they could literally, Raty could be a top six forward for them. You know what I mean? He could be a core guy.
Yeah, well, they sent him down. But it's also the All-Star break, so that might just be like a paper transaction. Bo's going to get to play a lot of minutes. And I just want to make it clear from the get-go so that there's no revisionism here. If he gets going, if he starts playing well, we're not going to say, oh, no, we shouldn't have done that. He wasn't doing it here. So, in my opinion,
all right,
he wasn't going to get it going here again. It was lost. Some guys need a fresh
all
start.
Our very astute viewers, all, however many, very few of you, just mark this time clip this part of the video and say that if Bo gets going, tweet this at Tom a million times.
I don't want to hear fans say oh, he was being held back. He got to play in the system that we've played in this year, which is more offensive and more take chances, and he still hasn't done anything. So I don't want to hear anybody if he goes and plays well in Vancouver. First of all, it won't matter because Vancouver is terrible. and it's funny for me to say this because we could be in the same spot in a year or two. I think I'm very interested now in talking about the pros and the cons, because I think this trade, I've already heard so many different opinions on this trade, and I lean towards I wish they didn't make it. But all right, here's the case laid out by the fans of this trade, and it's not a bad case. All right, so you just got a guy on pace for close to 50 goals. He's not going to do that every year. I have his stats up here. Where is it? I apologize. I do. Okay, here. So Lou said he's a perennial 30 to 35 goal guy. That is incorrect. So Lou is not looking at the stats. This year he has 31 goals. Last year he had 31. So he's going to blow past what he had last year. In 70 games, he had 31 goals last year. His career high in points is 61 in 2018-19. He should blow by that too. So it is worrying that it's a guy in a contract year, all of a sudden exploding. Those guys tend to go back to being average once they get paid. There's a worry
point.
that he's just, extra incentive to make more money.
But average for Bo Horvat is elite for the Islanders.
But it's not elite for any other team in the league. It really isn't. Like,
sure,
the argument I heard,
my point still stands. It's elite for the Islanders.
It really, I think a lot of this deal hinges on what, if he's extended and
Right.
how much he gets extended for, because, in my opinion, we're adding another Brock Nelson. And that's nothing against Brock Nelson. I said earlier today to my Isles guys that Brock Nelson, really good player on a great contract, by the way, $6 million for Brock, and he's like close to a point a game on an Islanders team that doesn't score too much. But I'm a little bit worried that because Brock makes $6 million, Horvat sounds like he wants like 8 or 9. That's going to be hard to explain if he goes back to normal. And scores at the same rate that he has for the rest of his career. So it's you're buying high on a guy, which can be a little bit worrying because this is the best. I think this is probably the best you're going to see out of him is this year. And he's having a great year, but it could be like a Chris Kreider thing. I saw one publication liken his year this year to Chris Kreider, where Chris Kreider exploded for like 52 goals last year, and every other year in his career had never scored 30 even. So that could be what Bo Horvat is, and you may have overpaid. But so as I usually do, I started by talking positively, and then I went right to the negative. But so getting back to the positive case, the positive case for this trade. What did you give up to get this guy that immediately has 12 goals more than your next best goal scorer on the Islanders? You gave up Bo, who needed a fresh start, and honestly, like, he was making way too much for his production. So that's almost like a cap dump. So no issue there. And player to player, what an improvement getting Bo Horvat, who could take faceoffs and might be able to spark the power play. And I read yesterday in a great article, I think it was on Daily Faceoff, that Bo Horvat specifically on power play faceoffs is 65% this year. Our power play needs to start in the offensive zone because we're not very good in the transition game. So I think that could be big. And also the fact that he has the Anders Lee ability of get in front of the net and cause havoc, not as much with his body, more so with his deflection ability, could be great. So there's some cause for like excitement in our power play.
I don't know. Anders Lee is 3 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier.
Oh yeah, I was saying more. So it's not as much
I
like
know
the,
what you mean,
the
though,
body;
yeah.
it's more
Yeah.
the hand-eye.
Yeah.
But so you gave away Bo, which I don't see as a negative, and I think is a positive for Bo. I think he needed a fresh start. Obviously, Aatu Raty, that's a tough one, but I don't want to prospect. I don't want to do what a lot of fans do, which is overrate our own prospects. There are other teams that have better prospects than Aatu Raty, and because the Islanders system is a little bit barren, we might be maybe coveting him a little bit too much because other teams would be willing to trade a prospect of his caliber, which is like middle 6 to top 6 forward, possibly. And also like it seems like a lot of people believe that Aatu Raty's ceiling, his cap, is Bo Horvat, like to be Bo Horvat eventually. So if you're all the way in on Win now, which I wasn't, but now I've been thrust into forcing to have to be, then you got a guy that's just further along, way further along his progression, 7 years longer. He's not out of his prime. He's 27 years old. And he's going to make the team better now. So, and also the first round pick that they give up, it's a mystery box. It is anticipated to be a really good draft, but teams don't always knock it out of the park. I mean, who knows? Maybe Vancouver takes the Michael Dow Cole player at whatever pick. It's top 12 protected, which means we're not giving away a super high pick this year. It's not protected next year, though, so you have to pray to God that we're not terrible next year, or you're screwing the rebuild, because we'll be on a rebuild if we, first of all, don't re-sign Horvat and miss the playoffs and don't have our first round pick. That's about the apocalyptic scenario. So I feel like I laid out both cases. Also, very quickly, because I want to get you guys your guys' opinions on it. The last thing in terms of the quickly on the negative is that this kind of feels like the Islanders won 2 games before the All-Star break, and Lou was like, Stanley Cup back on. Let me go make a very obvious desperation trade, which probably won't blow up in my face, but it's not impossible that it does very, badly. So what do you guys think?
Okay, wait, Sterling. So let's get your honest opinion. So Tom laid out both sides. So yeah, what's your honest take on this?
What's your nefarious take? Tell us your lies.
Okay, like right now I'm on the positive side of the trade, and I think you did a good point showing why some people would like that. I did want to add an interesting perspective I've been seeing a lot of recently, which is that even though this completely seems like it's a win now trade, I don't think Lou would realize to do this, but there is a possibility where we're still an average team over the next month or so, and it looks like we're not going to do anything in the playoffs. Well, come trade deadline time, Vancouver already retained some salary of Horvat. If we retained a bit more, you could get a fantastic. Okay, Vancouver didn't get a fantastic package for Horvat, but we could get a really good package for him to help us with our retool. So I think the worst case for this trade is actually making the playoffs and then losing in the first round. Because if we continue to suck even with him, I think this is actually a better deal than if we barely make the playoffs.
James and Sarah?
You want to go first? Or you want me to go
You
first?
can go first.
I think it kind of comes down to my feelings are it's the last ditch effort, obviously, before the rebuild. And I actually didn't think about what Sterling was saying. So if we sign him for an extension, then yeah, like we can get something back for him. So
or the opposite, like if they're still bad, like he got them. So he got Horvat early enough. Like this is why people were taken off guard, is because usually teams wait until closer to the trade deadline, which is still a month away,
right,
to make a trade of this. This is a big trade.
Oh, you mean even for this year to get something?
Yeah. So literally, this is why you probably didn't understand it, because it's very strange and it's very out there, but it's not impossible.
Sorry, yeah, it was
if
Sigma
they still
IQ move.
Yeah, it's the meme of the the guy, the galaxy
brain.
Yeah, but like if they were to have another stretch like they just did, where they lose like 10 of 11.
Right. Just get rid of him.
They could trade the guy they just got. What's funny? If you do that in the NHL video games, you get a quick notification. It says, just my tip, I wouldn't trade a guy you just traded for. It'll hurt your GM rep. Lou Lamoriello was like, screw that. I don't care. I'm 80 years old. But anyway, Sarah and James, continue.
So long story short though, it's I'm hopeful for the trade, but I guess you're forced to care at this point, and it's hard to. The last thing I'll say about it is that it's hard to read Lou in all situations. It's either like if you assume that he's playing checkers, not even regular chess, not 3D chess, 4D chess, anything. If you like
2D checkers,
2D checkers, if you just assume he's like, you take his actions at face value, you might like, it's easy to assume like, oh, like what you said, like it was a last ditch effort to kind of make us care about the season, whatever, on his way out. But if I had to guess, I would say obviously there's more care and thought, and he probably talked to. I'm sure every GM is always talking to other teams about possible trade deals and stuff. But so I would say that it's I don't know. I wouldn't take it at the face value being that it was a last ditch effort. So I remain hopeful, and that's pretty much it. that's about as optimistic as I'm letting myself be at the moment. Mm-hmm. It really sucks that this happened, right at the All-Star break. We didn't get a chance to, like at least see one game.
Yeah, it is tough to make that big a trade and then have that much time off.
Mm-hmm. I'm very happy it happened way before the trade deadline. And because remember a couple years, when Pajot, we traded for Pajot, and like people were furious with Lou. Tom, I could probably find the video that you made about how you were mad at Lou. And
yeah, I thought it was. I mean, I loved Pajot, but I thought it was a lot that they gave up. It was like a first.
Well, no, but even before the trade was announced, because he made it like right before the trade, like on the day of the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. And so like everybody was mad, and then everybody was rejoicing that he made a trade, and obviously it worked out, kind of, right? Like we made it.
Yeah, I would say it's been pretty decent.
And so so it's like, and again, I don't think that was something. I don't think that was a last minute decision by Lou back then. I think that was something he was working on. Maybe he felt pressure from, or like maybe not pressure is the right word for somebody like Lou, but he felt the positive vibes from the fan base for that they wanted to trade. I don't know.
Well, I should be more clear. So I don't think it was like desperation in terms of.
You said it. That's
like,
what,
no.
Go back to what you said.
You're misinterpreting. You're misinterpreting what I mean by desperation. What I mean by desperation is this is the last year of his contract. It's not clear that the Islanders are going to re-up him. And he's 80 years old. So he's just like, why should I care about the future? Mm-hmm. Going for it. And also, like, if they honestly, I'm very curious if the Islanders lost the last two games before the All-Star break. Do they make the trade? Like, literally, did he just make it because, he was like, we beat Vegas, we're good now. But you still have to win like 20 out of your 30 next games to make the playoffs. It's going to be really tough.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next.
Sarah, what do you think?
I'm going to bring up a point that nobody has brought up yet. What about how do you guys feel like in terms of because I feel like this was because Wahlstrom is hurt. He's out indefinitely. So they needed some kind of a boost, some kind of like higher level player that can compete with the first and second lines, and that's probably where he's going to be, right?
Yeah, some higher love, if you will. Islanders win song.
So wait,
and
so
yes,
are you saying
he'll probably play first line with Barzy, I think.
So then, are you saying that if Wahlstrom was healthy, this trade also wouldn't have happened?
Most likely not.
I don't know. It's interesting. I think they definitely now. Also, as Sterling pointed out, the fact that the Islanders retained Vegas, Vancouver. I got there eventually. Vancouver retained salary here means that the Islanders. But because think of it like this, Bo's contract, Bo Horvat, I have to specify now. Bo Horvat's contract is up after this year. So Vancouver retaining salary for this year means we are going to make another move this year, it sounds like, before the All-Star break. Or maybe that is just a sweetener to help if they do flip, like Sterling said, if they do suck still with Bo and then flip him, which I've never seen, but would be very interesting, then that retained salary could help a team get Bo and stay under the cap. So from that perspective, I give Lou credit because that's really thinking ahead, and it gives you some flexibility in either scenario. If you're good, you can add more money.
I thought we hated Lou. What's going on?
No,
You just gave
okay.
Lou credit.
Well, you're doing what the internet does, which is no nuance. There is no nuance ever.
I'm
But
kidding.
yeah. But yeah, I got to give in that perspective. Lou has done something that gives him some flexibility. Either way, if they suck and they try to flip him, I've never seen a team do that. I've never seen a team trade for a guy and then flip him. But I also don't think I've seen this big a trade occur, this far out from the deadline during the season. So you can't really rule out anything at the moment because Lou is on a mission. Lou is very clearly desperate to get one more shot at the cup, and he's not ready to give up on the core here. And it's going to make for really interesting stuff, but it's probably going to make for either a Stanley Cup win or 15 years of rebuilding.
I mean, is any rebuild
or a Stanley Cup win and then 15 years of rebuilding?
Yes.
I mean,
but that makes it worth it. The cup makes it worth it.
We've been surviving on our Stanley Cup wins from 40 years ago. I think we could, deal with 15 years after another Stanley Cup win.
I'm a Jets fan. I've been dealing with 59 for the Jets, or not 59, 50. I'm blanking.
So as long as the Islanders have been around, the Jets have not won the Super Bowl.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, I mean those are the cases. Sarah, did you have anything else?
I don't know. I really just feel like it's a case of like just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Literally. Like,
yeah,
I was just at the point of being indifferent.
Yes.
And now this trade, like
I was exactly there. I mean, I was all the way like, all right, well, I was just gonna get invested for us, as we talked about on the last podcast, like, what can we sell? What can we sell and turn this into a team that can compete either next year or the year after. And I was just on last week, the Isles Never Say Die podcast, and it was really interesting because we were talking through, kind of similar stuff to this, but it was before Bo was acquired, Bo Horvat. And I wonder also, Sarah, you brought up, we brought up the different scenarios of what brought this trade to be.
mm-hmm.
Does Wally missing time impact it? Probably a little bit, at least a little bit. And what else I guess affect, like the fact that they won the last two games before the break, maybe that affected it. I am curious now, if you kind of got to go all in at this point. You are pretty much all in, but like, are we going to now trade for Timo Meier? And first of all, how are we going to do that? Kind of what Sterling said, except with not so. If the Islanders do, this starts with like the Islanders need to get on a bit of a run before the All-Star, before the trade deadline. And I have seen people say, "What if you flip Varley and use that, whatever that return is, to acquire another player, like another top sixer?" But like Timo Meier, Vladimir Tarasenko. The Tarasenko one doesn't make as much sense because he's 31 or 32 and he's on an expiring deal too. So that's another, just like, if you thought the Bo one was tricky, try the same trade for an older guy. Like, very curious if that happened. But I don't know, like, what would we do in goal then? Like, that's my response to that. Like, I was just talking to Sterling before we started about how I recreated this trade in NHL 22, and Sterling was like, "So who's your backup goalie?" I was like, Corey Schneider, of course, which is not something that I
elite goaltender, Corey Schneider.
That's something you could do if you were tanking, but you can't. You're all the way in now. So I don't, unless the Islanders were to make a trade where it's like the Islanders send Semyon Varlamov to the LA Kings and acquire, first of all, you need like a first rounder if you're expecting to now, or maybe not. Maybe you make a smaller trade with the return from Varley. So you trade Varley to the Kings and you get a second round pick. Plus, they have 3 goalies right now. One of them, they gave a big contract and is so bad he's playing in the minors. So you probably don't want him. That's Cal Peterson. What if you acquire Phoenix Copley, who is currently starting for LA, has very pedestrian numbers, but like the numbers that you would accept out of your backup, but he's starting for them. So we send Varley over there. He gives them actual starter numbers. We get our backup goalie without tanking the rest of this year, and we get a pick, which then you can use on, to steal an idea from Phil's Facts on Twitter, a smaller trade. Like, now this wouldn't require a second. This would require much less investment, but like a depth guy like Andreas Athanasiou, some guy that really skates well and doesn't really, he's not like going to cost you much. So I'm curious to see now, because Phil made the case of like doing this like the Rangers did last year. So Rangers made a big trade for, who was it at the time that the Rangers made the big trade for last year?
Copp?
Copp, yes, exactly. Copp was the big trade they made last year, but then they also made minor deals for Tyler Mott. And Tyler Mott cost basically nothing and fit pretty well and had a good playoff run. So if you're going to follow that, then with that Varley trade, you use a little bit of that capital, that draft capital that you've acquired, to acquire a depth piece that you think can just fit on the first line or in the top six, or just be a depth guy with Wally out now. If Wally didn't get hurt, if Wally was going to play again this year, then maybe I would lean towards don't do anything else. But at this point, you may as well just the future is over.
Yeah.
The planet is burning.
Okay, wait. Okay. So that sounds to me like 4D chess. You know what I mean? Like you're.
Oh yeah. Well,
there's
so many moving parts. So many moving parts. That's why I wouldn't have made the trade, because it requires you to make a lot of other moves now. I think to like get to the point that, because think of it right now, if Bo Horvat's good, and we sneak in as the 8th seed, good luck against the Boston Bruins. They're maybe the best team in NHL history. Good luck. Good luck, Islanders. You snuck into the playoffs and your ward is getting swept.
No, you know what will happen though if we'll beat the Bruins and then we'll lose to Tampa again. That's what will happen.
Get out. No,
I guess that really is reverse Columbus for a few years ago. That's basically what happened. Just swap the team.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, Columbus bought before the deadline. They got that year, not Johansson, Duchesne. They got Duchesne. Yeah. They had Gaudreau. There was a third player in there. I'm blanking on it. There was another big buy, but they went all out, and then they swept Tampa Bay. And then they got knocked out promptly after that. So like Sterling said, the scenario you just brought up, that would be exactly Columbus.
By Boston.
Yeah, by Boston. Sorry, another burp.
It's all right. We forgive you. Yeah. So, okay. So kind of jumping from that though, since we're kind of, getting a taste of what's going on with the rest of the league. So the standings right now, like what's the actual probability that we do slip into the wild card spot or possibly higher? So I have the standings up on screen right now where right now Buffalo is ahead of us in the wild card.
Yeah, that's promising.
And let's see, they're ahead of us by 1 point, but they have
games in hand. Games in hand.
The Washington Capitals have 58 points. They're only 3 points behind them, and we're even on games. So anyway, all right. So let's start with Sterling. Where do you think do you think the future holds for the wild card or just playoff?
Yeah, I have not thought this ever. I just thought of this right now, but I actually wouldn't be too surprised to see both Buffalo and the Islanders make it and see Pittsburgh and Washington fall off. I mean, every year I say both of those teams are going to fall off, just like everyone else.
And one year you'll be right. So,
but yeah,
well, hey, they definitely are a little bit like they're in the wild card spots. In years past, the Caps and Pittsburgh would have been, in divisional spots.
I mean, the Caps have held the first place spot in the Metro, like I don't know if it was last year, but 2 years prior, they were like solidly first place.
Yeah, you could definitely see, they're coming towards the end of their time on top. Carolina's a team that we expected for a while to become that, and they are. And the Devils are way ahead of schedule, so credit to them. But Yeah, Sterling, that's an interesting point. I would really like to see Buffalo make the playoffs a lot. They're a fun team. They're very young. It could be a very much like for them, like, first of all, if you get in, that's enough. It's a successful season if you're Buffalo and you get in. You could get smacked in the first round. It doesn't matter. It's very much like the 2013 Islanders playing Pittsburgh in the first round. You're playing with house money. No one expected you to be there. Go have fun. And that's the best scenario to be in, is to be ahead of schedule, get that experience in. And if you show even a little bit of fight, like, that's great. So, God, Buffalo fans, you're in a great spot. This could be a lot of fun. So yeah, I could definitely see Buffalo 3 games in hand on Washington, 2 points back. Absolutely could see that. Pittsburgh has even games with Buffalo and only 1 point ahead. So yeah, Buffalo's a real contender. If you couldn't tell, I'm like rooting for Buffalo if they get in.
Are you rooting for Buffalo at the expense of the Islanders?
No, absolutely. No.
All right,
No, skipping ahead to like
just checking your loyalty there.
No, if Buffalo gets in, I'm gonna be rooting for them in any series where they're not playing the Islanders, which would be every series, because like
yeah,
even like, and that's not like my sly way of saying the Islanders aren't getting in. Like, if they both got in, like, they both be wild cards, so like,
right,
they're not gonna match up unless both of them go on crazy runs and it's a 7-8 seed matchup for the conference finals. So there's that. But I was not asked my opinion, so I would like Sterling to continue.
I mean, I don't have much other to say except we just talked about Washington being able to get jumped over easily. Pittsburgh's main downfall, I think, is going to be their goaltending, with Jarry constantly getting hurt.
You can have Varley.
I mean, that'd be an interesting trade, even though it is in the same division.
Yeah, I think that's a major holdup.
I don't care too much about that until we play him in the playoffs and he is a brick wall. But like, until then, I wouldn't mind doing that. But yeah, I'll pass it on for now.
Also, that's like like, you would have to have major stones on you to make that trade, and then if Pittsburgh makes the playoffs because Varley beat you, like, not great.
Yeah, suck.
That would be rough. But yeah, James and Sarah, what do you think in terms of playoff prospects?
You want to go first, or
what are the odds? Maybe actually, first, I want to give Sterling, what % odds would you give the Islanders right now?
Assuming they make no more trades, like 40.
Yeah. 40? Okay. James and Sarah, do you guys want to lead off with your numbers? You want to talk through it first?
I don't know. My numbers are I think 40's a little generous from what I was thinking. I was thinking more like 1 and 3, so close, similar. I don't know why though. That's just the number that came to mind. Maybe if Sterling didn't say 40%, I wouldn't have been anchored to that number.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like 20 to 30.
20-30%.
We're just decreasing, and I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you right now, mine's not going to be higher than anybody else's. So we're just going down.
So I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I would be surprised to see Washington or Pittsburgh fall off so much, but it's such a tight race. Florida, the Panthers are 1 point behind us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Philadelphia's 51 points. It's like we're all within 7 points of each other.
If Philly gets into the playoffs, I want a comet to hit the planet.
And then Detroit's at 50 points. I bet you there's Detroit fans thinking right now that they could slip into the wild card spot. So it's like,
they'd be lunatics because they lost to the Islanders.
But assuming, like what Sterling said, assuming no more trades, I think the first week or two with Bo Horvat, we're back. The Islanders are back playing. Like kind of, it'll just be a trial run. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see it by the end of by the trade deadline where they're like how they're playing with Bo, presumably on the top line with Barzal. So I would say a 1 in 3 chance right now.
Okay, Sarah.
Okay.
Well, the thing that I would most be surprised about would be if Pittsburgh and Washington really fell off that much, because they've always been the Islanders like thorn in their side, especially in the playoffs. And then
Well, not the West.
Not Pittsburgh. They can eat it.
Not the last 2 seasons we made it to the playoffs, though. We
true,
beat both of
we
them, yeah.
swept
Yeah, and we didn't sweep Washington, but we beat them. You know what I mean?
We beat them pretty thoroughly, but that
Yeah.
very different Islander
Pittsburgh.
team at this point.
It's never been guaranteed with those teams,
Yeah.
like ever.
Yeah. No. We play wacky ass games with the Caps only.
I know.
No normal games with the Caps. Only there's 2 ways the Cap games end. We blow a 3-goal lead or they blow a 3-goal lead. That's the way it goes. And when we play Pittsburgh, it's usually a little more standard. But yeah, the Capitals we just play wacky ass games with.
Yeah, when we play Pittsburgh, it's just us like just glaring at Sidney Crosby, just being like, "Why?" Or that's pretty much it.
So now, for my opinion, so it's interesting. Dom Luszczyszyn from The Athletic has his. I don't know how he calculates it. He has his own method that has the Islanders. It had the Islanders pre Bo Horvat at 14%. Post Bo Horvat, it has it up to 19.
Whoa,
Let's go.
Let's go.
I hate it because Dom Luszczyszyn clearly is a huge Toronto homer. Or not Toronto homer. He just like very clearly hates the Islanders. And I know he would say like, "Oh, everybody says I hate all their teams." But very like the past week he's just spent like being like the Islanders are a waste of time, this and that. And it's like, we get it. We booed John Tavares and you hate us now. Get over it. But I have to agree in the same area as Dom. I think like 25 is like the highest I'll go, percentage wise. I think I'll look at our schedule, but I had seen that our strength of schedule remaining was like among the highest in the league, like the hardest schedules. I didn't think we were a Bo Horvat away from making the playoffs. I think there are like structural problems with this team. In that same article I read from Daily Faceoff about, how Bo Horvat could propel the Islanders' power play and help their offense get going. It also pointed out that the Islanders really have abandoned defense in pursuit of goals, which hasn't worked for goals. Like they've gone like 20 games where they've averaged like 2 goals a game. That's dreadful. And in that time, apparently the amount of chances they've given up in the slot, like high danger chances, is like 3rd most in the league. And the teams that surround us are like the worst teams in the league, like Anaheim. I think I almost said Vegas. That is completely incorrect. Anaheim is the one that jumps to mind, but it's like a bunch of teams that are dreadful. And then the Islanders, who could be dreadful. They're really, 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 really banking on Ilya Sorokin to just bail them out. They made the trade in the offseason for Romanov. I don't think that's worked out. He's better than Chara. Like that's the world's lowest bar that has ever existed.
Why would you even use that?
Yeah, exactly. And like Aho's improved, and I'll give him credit for that. It seems like even the best guys like Pelican Pulock, I don't know. I just don't love what I've seen from them as much this year. Pulock is just, no more offense from Pulock. The guy that we drafted to be this guy that hits 100-mile-an-hour slap shots. First of all, can't hit the net. Now he just doesn't even shoot. It's like, well, I can't lose if I don't try. Good mentality. I have that same mentality, but I can make fun of it in others.
We're not paying you millions of dollars a year to have that mentality. We're paying nothing to have that mentality.
I think there are serious structural issues in this Islander team that are not going to be patched up by acquiring a man who has 31 goals and 12 of them are deflections. We've been talking about how we need shooters. And Bo Horvat wouldn't really qualify as like
he could deflect. Shooter. He could deflect some of those.
Yeah, but that requires anyone else on this team to put the puck on net.
Yeah.
So that if Barzy plays with Horvat, I would assume even if Barzy still plays center, he won't take the faceoffs. Horvat, like is going to have to drive the net, and Barzy is going to have to shoot a lot. And I think he's starting to get there, shooting the puck more this year. We've seen a lot of really nice snipes from Barzy this year, including our
The
most
OT
recent
win.
goal. Yeah,
Yes.
our most recent goal to win that Vegas game.
I scared Sarah because I yelled so loud. I was like, I couldn't believe it was like it literally looked like a Brock Nelson wrister.
Yeah, it was a great
perfect.
shot. We know he has that in him. It's just, how often does it show up? And what scares me, going back to like the 2 games before the All-Star break, like, oh, we won the 2 games, now we got to buy. You scored 2 goals in each game. Once again, they can't. You're not going to win like that. You just can't. I just like, what's the percent chance, or what's the percent of games you're going to win when you score 2 goals? Pretty low. I know this Islander team like does not give up a ton of goals, but like, if we're talking about like, oh, we still need to move Varley to acquire more pieces, then the goaltending is going to suffer, and the goaltending is the only thing keeping us in it. So like, you're gonna, if you do trade Varley for more players, you're gonna run Sorokin into the ground. He's gonna be cooked by the end of this year, not for like his career, but I mean like, he's gonna play like 25 of 30 games if you trade Varley, and then come playoff time, he's gonna be like, oh, like he's not gonna be doing well. I think. I don't like to see us burn a goalie out. I think that's the situation that would happen if we're talking about like, oh, well, you could still flip guys. And I don't think we were only a Bo Horvat away. Man, I got so negative so quick. But I mean, like, I really think this trade in the long run might not hurt us. Like, all it takes is that first round pick not being a good pick and Aatu Raty just being okay. And like, we don't really get hurt long term by that trade. It's more so like not stocking the minor league system because we keep trading away our first rounds. And, Lou could very much leave this team in a big lurch where our prospect pool is empty. We've got that kid Maggio who's leading the OHL in scoring, but he's 20 years old. Not sure when he's going to be in the NHL. I don't think he's going to jump from the OHL to the NHL straight away. So, that's been the Tom Depression Hour.
We need more quality players.
Like
Andrew Ladd.
Hey, he scored over 20 goals in 2016-17.
So he was, I guess, not bad.
Yeah, and then he could not play for the rest of his life.
Okay, so we got to kind of wrap it up. What do you guys want to end this on?
I think we should all scream, and the person that screams the longest wins.
That is completely biased to your skill set. Whoever wins gets this fantastic Andrew Ladd bobblehead.
I think a good place to end might be for everybody to maybe throw out where they think the Islanders will finish, like where in the standings, and are we screwed? Like, if you're optimistic, you could say like, we're going to finish 9th, but we're not screwed because our prospects are going to pan out, like something like that.
Here's the thing. So before we do that, I have one question follow-up for Sterling and Tom. If this trade happened, this Bo Horvat trade happened last year around the trade deadline, so like maybe, whatever, what would be, just try and think like, how would that make it different if it happened last year?
Sterling, you want to go?
Yeah, I think not much at all. They were already really hot going down the stretch. And if you want to say they'd sneak into the playoffs, I think having your left side defensively include both Chara and Green is a massive problem. So they would have gone nowhere.
Okay, that's fair. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think kind of like this year, the structural issues are more than adding one player, but also, keep in mind, Bo Horvat's having a career year this year.
Right.
If the Islanders had added him last year, it wouldn't have even been as big an ad. It still would have been an ad, but it wouldn't be like 31 goals. Well, actually, he finished with 31 goals, but it wouldn't have been like guy on pace for 50 goals. Like, big difference. Like, he's got 31 goals in 49 games this year. Last year, he had 31 goals in 70. Huge difference in goals per game. And he's shooting 22% this year, which is like not sustainable. I think the fact that he wasn't as good last year probably would have offset the excitement of like, oh, but we have him with a year left on his deal now.
Okay.
I
So
probably
then,
wouldn't be as doomer about the future though, but it also
right.
depends on the return. Like, it depends on if we had given away the same thing last year. I guess we hadn't seen Aatu Raty play yet. I would have been more in favor of it because then it would have been like, oh, we gave away 2 mystery boxes. Now I like Aatu Raty, and I think he could be a decent player. So I guess I'm a little bit more worried now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like,
I
how
was
does that
about
compare to now?
I was
Because
about as down on Bo last year.
no,
As
you were way more down on him this year for sure.
no, I felt this last. I mean, I think I made it pretty clear last year that he, like, offensively, just he's not worth what he makes. He's got 16 points and he makes like 4 million.
Yeah.
It's not good enough at all. And last year it wasn't much better. And he admitted as much. Like, he talked today. He said, I'm looking forward to finding my game again. He knows he's not playing well. And I'm really I'm sad. Like, look, I was working on a fanfic with him and Barzy. So, like, that's sad. But, like, he's still here in memory if I write hot, steamy fanfics about them.
I also think last year, had this trade gone through, I think maybe one of the pieces is a healthy Wallstrom, which would have killed me. So I guess I'm grateful he didn't get traded yet. There's still the trade deadline. But
yeah.
I
wonder if, like, the Islanders have any plans to hold on to Wally, because people have already started to speculate. Like,
desperately hope so.
Yeah, I mean, it's he's still so young. I don't want to give up on him. Although at this point in his career, he's still pretty much like doesn't move the needle too much for me. But I would hate to like just give up on a guy that quickly. Man, it sucks. Like, if he were healthy, you could just say, oh, well, let's see what he is for the rest of the year, and then like move on from him if he doesn't show any progress. And now we're not going to be able to see any progress. So they're going to have a tough call to make with that. They might be able to use him. If a team, you never know what GMs in the NHL value, every GM is different. So like a GM out there might still see Wally and be like, oh boy, that's untapped potential. We get him over here. I'm willing to pay for that. And like, I don't know who that would be. It would probably have to be like a team that like wants to add a player, doesn't have to work. Like, Wally's cap is nothing. So like, it's a good flyer for a team that just is like, oh, what about a depth piece? Oliver Wahlstrom. So yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes.
All right, so are we going to end it on how we think the standings will end up for the Islanders?
Sure.
All right.
We gave the % chance, but that's...
I know. Yeah. So we'll be committing a logical fallacy if we say something that's not consistent with
not necessarily. You could say the chances are low, but I believe we'll do it. Well, yeah. We got that it factor, baby.
Yeah. Personally, I think I we'll have to see. It depends so much on if Bo Horvat moves the needle, kind of like basically what you're just saying. But I have a bad feeling we're gonna just miss the wild card. Like I think that's the most likely scenario. And it's gonna suck, and then we're gonna suck for 15 years.
Nice.
And then but it'll be cheap tickets to go to the UBS Arena, and it'll be great.
Belmont Bunch year 16. We're all depressed. Every video is the same thing.
Yeah.
Man, they stink
again today.
Hello and welcome back to Belmont Bunch.
Remember that great year we had
Josh Bailey
years ago when we made
Josh Bailey is still playing. Josh Bailey's the captain, baby.
Lee is a $7 million fourth liner.
Josh Bailey is the coach. Anders Lee is the power play coach. Barzy is finishing up a career stuck on the island without winning anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the Islanders have reacquired 39-year-old Beauvillier.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 60-year-old Zdeno Chara.
Yeah, Beauvillier is playing on the third line in the Zach Parise role as a 39-year-old.
He would be good at that, most likely.
No.
No.
Actually, maybe. He's got chutzpah.
Yeah.
but
All right.
only when he feels like it.
So Sarah, where do you think they'll end the standings?
They would be very, very, very lucky if they slipped into the wild card. But like James said, I just have this feeling that they're just not gonna get there.
Still my answer. Anyway, all
I
right.
said they would be lucky to slip in. You didn't say anything.
I think they'd be unlucky to slip in. No. All right.
I will
You
go
think-
next because if you
I
leave
already
me
asked
last,
Sterling.
oh well,
asked
if you
Sterling.
leave me last, I'll just keep talking. If I know Sterling has to
No,
go,
no,
I'll
no,
be like,
no.
all right, I gotta end this.
Sterling, you go
All right.
first.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about the teams below us. Like, I think the Panthers just had their moment and it's already over. I mean, when you have Mark Stahl on your defense, that's a separate issue. But I do think even though I gave them the highest chance, I'm thinking ninth place right now, in the East. I think one of Pittsburgh and Washington will fall out of the playoffs, not both. And I think our draft pick we traded was top 12 protected.
Yeah.
So we'd also lose our pick this year. So a bad outcome.
Wow, that is actually, you're right. I didn't think of that. That is the worst.
But honestly, if we lose it this year, might not be terrible because like the alternative is like imagine next year they're like, so imagine this year we hold on to our draft pick and then next year we're dog shit and we now that's not protected next year. Like imagine next year we lose the 4th overall pick because we're terrible and the pick this year didn't so I'm kind of at the like that's the doomsday scenario is, you know, we our draft pick carries over to next year and we're awful. I am going
I mean,
to
then
say
we could sell at that point and get a first rounder back. You know, you could imagine.
I mean, but still, like you're not going to be getting as good value as you being shit. You know, like
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to stomach being terrible if you're like, well, we're going to get Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of teams this year that are just like, oh, thank God we're terrible. Like the Islanders are in a bad spot because we keep missing out on top generational talents because we're good enough to not get a good draft pick, but we're not good enough to win the cup. So I would say that we are going to finish 10th in the conference. So we all pretty much have the same area. You guys all have 9th.
Mm-hmm.
I have 10th because I think the Caps and Pittsburgh are better than us. And I think Buffalo, man, it's tough. Buffalo every year has a stretch where they lose 10 games in a row. That's like a non-negotiable. Every year it falls off. And also keep in mind, Buffalo's goalies are 41 or 42-year-old Craig Anderson and like a 20-year-old goalie who's not quite there yet. So I could see Buffalo falling off any minute, but like Buffalo will still be fun because they'll score 5 goals a game and give up 6. So you know what? I guess I'll flip it. I will say that I'll stick by my belief that Buffalo is going to fall back to earth, but still have a fun future, and it's just going to be because of goaltending. So I'll say the Islanders finish 9th, but it's kind of similar to last year where they're like 10 points out. I mean, it won't be as bad. Last year it was what, like 20 points out, something like that. This year I'll say like, oh, the Islanders missed by 10 points. And that would mean that we would lose our first pick, right? Yeah. So that would be, I think, better. Even though this year's supposed to be a good draft, I'd rather lose a pick in the teens than give up what could be a really high draft pick next year if we're like real bad. Also, like if we don't re-sign Horvat, if that turned out to be a rental, you better hope that we lose the pick this year and not next year, because next year will be terrible and won't have a draft pick.
Mm-hmm. Just curious about Buffalo. At what year do you think you need to see a playoff berth and not just, oh, it's a
next year.
Next year?
Yeah, I will give them. They didn't expect to be where they are right now, so they didn't fortify goaltending. Hey, maybe at the deadline they go ahead and get a goalie. I don't know who's available. Maybe Thatcher Demko from if Vancouver's like, oh, let's sell everyone, which they might be doing. So if they get Thatcher Demko and like Thatcher Demko remembers how to play goalie, then I would expect them to make it this year. But I think the expectations start next year for Buffalo. This year they're ahead of schedule. If they miss, it'll still be a feel-good story as long as everybody stays healthy. Rasmus Dahlin's getting there. This is turning into a Buffalo Sabres podcast. Look, I really like what they have. Also, I have Tage Thompson in fantasy. But yeah, I think Buffalo next year, the expectations start. So they're in the opposite direction of the Islanders, where it's like we're just holding on, and Buffalo's like, we're just starting, baby. We're just getting going.
All right. Any closing
Next week,
thoughts?
we will talk about the Sabres only. No, I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about with the Isles with, early Horvat games.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for joining. Thank you, Sterling and Sarah, for joining the podcast once again. Returning guests,
I apologize as usual.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.